Edgar Legoale Foundation, together with Free State Central News, has started a process of documenting Tumahole Day history, focusing on the historic 15 July 1984 Grand Protest. The protests were triggered by the decision by the white-led municipality to increase the rent only for homes occupied by black people. Several hundred of people were injured by the police trying to break up the protest, while Midongalo died of his injuries while in police custody. Mr. Thabo Manyoni, the current chairperson of the Municipal Demarcation Board. He was born on the 1st of January 1960. He holds a Bachelor of Art degree, diploma in business management. He was the first executive mayor of Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality in the Free State. He also served as the national chair of SALGA in South Africa. Thabo Manyoni, the politician, he also served as the deputy chairperson of the ANC in the Free State and also the chairperson of Motheo region. Welcome to Free State Central News. My name is Masemola. Today we are going to be talking to Ndate Thabo Manyoni. We are going to be talking about Tumahole Day. And he's with us today. Ndate Manyoni, welcome to Free State Central News.
Thanks very much. Let me also take the opportunity to appreciate the opportunity that you are giving me to talk about this great day in our history.
Ndate Manyoni, can you give us a bit of background? The activities that led to July the 15th, 1984 in Tumahole?
Let me first start by saying activities of the 15th July in Tumahole were part of the broader struggles in our country. You must remember that the history of South Africa is the history of plunder by colonialists, and of course, by that time, what we called the white regime, which is the apartheid system, where black people were supposed to be modern slaves in the sense of just providing labor and not necessarily being citizens of this country, except being part of your labor production. And most of our people, actually all black people, were staying in townships where the infrastructure for service delivery was non-existent. You'll have taps in the street. You'll never have running water in houses in the black townships. You'll be having the bucket system. You would not necessarily be having electricity in houses like we are supposed to be having these days. Roads were never tarred in the townships and so on. Most people were living in shacks and so on. Those conditions, they then, of course, created a condition where most of us and those who came before us to start saying, if we are part of South Africans, we need to change this system. By that time, then, we had movements like your Black Consciousness Movement and so forth coming in, the Freedom Charter being popularized and so forth. You know, even in Tumahole, when you reach the age of 18, you were supposed to be paying what we are calling lodger's permits when you stay with your parents. You were lodging at your own home, in other words, simply because we were not supposed to be citizens of this country, even in those early 80s period. Now, given all those, the movement grew. Of course, later you'll know about you'll know about the 14th, you'll know about those type of activities. But the consciousness of our people grew to such an extent that they had to stand up and change things. Tumahole Day, as we call it, is a precursor of what we call the Vaal riots or Vaal uprisings. In other words, Vaal uprisings started in Tumahole, because it was after a week or so then people got mobilized in the fall, and they also started uprising. Of course, you can imagine it was July 15th, a very cold day. Young people had decided we are not going to take this anymore. Mainly young people. They started to have a march. You would not believe that that march was not necessarily planned in terms of going house to house, door to door, and so on. There's very few people who decided we are leading this. Barnard, Saxtein, and so on. And then, of course, because conditions were in such a way that everybody felt that what is happening out now is the right thing. So people started joining, particularly young people, because young people have nothing to lose. They are young, they are bold, you know. Of course, the police came and started shooting. Some young people died there. Let me indicate, we didn't have a local government that we are having today. We had what we call black local authorities. We didn't have elected councillors that we are having today. We had those reps who were supposed to be councillors, of course, block money, as we call them. Of course, they were imposed in our communities for the sake of maintaining stability, security, in other words, making sure that we are paying those lodgers' permits and rentals and so forth. But it was felt that we can't carry on paying these rentals, lodgers' permits, and so forth. Slogans like Asinamali propped up, Asipatali rent, and so forth. Upotha Yahlanyana. Those were the songs that came out during that period. And the march took place. There was a confrontation with the army later. But what I would like to highlight is, although many old people were not participating in those marches, they were giving support to those marches. And also some of the church leaders were also giving support to this. Because evil is evil, so they had to take a stand. Amongst those, of course, you'll remember Father Balinki, who played a very important role in our community in Tumahole. I remember that they even went to one soldier who was aiming a rifle to the marchers, and he shook that soldier, said, "Stop killing our children," and so forth. So I'm trying to indicate it that even if they were not marching, but they were supporting the march. And that march, in a way, it changed the history of engagement. When I'm talking about engagement, I'm talking about fighting apartheid. Because it was no more an issue of begging, but it was now an issue of directly engaging, of course, with the white apartheid regime. Yes. In the sense of now being prepared to go to the streets and fight. That is the Tumahole Day. It brought up many leaders in our community in Tumahole. And it conscientized many. As you all know, Bob T. Saxtein, who unfortunately passed on in Angola, because they were conscientized. They started joining the underground movement, as we call it, in other words, MK. They started joining the ANC. Many of them started really getting involved in our struggles. And we have many of those leaders in Tumahole. Unfortunately, many of them, of course, have passed on. Tom Letsuenyo, as you know. Of course, our leaders like Fezle Dabi, they always have been there, conscientizing, teaching about politics, and so forth. Later, of course, building Tumahole's student organization, which we called TSO, under the guise of cultural activities, games and so forth, musical activities and so forth. But mainly to conscientize and get as many people as possible to be involved in our struggle. And it basically happened. But why? Of course, the main thing was to address and change the lives of black South Africans who were living in squalor, poverty. Even if people were working, I must indicate, it was like slave labor, because it was a matter of take it or leave it. White people will come with bakkies, lorries to the municipal offices there. People who are unemployed had to queue there, then they take you. You don't choose, you don't apply. They take you, you work. That's it. And if you were not working, you have to give also a reason. Because you're cheap labor, so you are supposed to be working anyway. Our dom passes had to have a stamp that indicates you are working. If you didn't have the stamp, of course, you get locked up. So you had just to not really sell your labor, just offer it and take whatever price. That's how things were.
One of the first people to be maybe the first victim was Milongalo. Can you tell us more about Milongalo?
Yes. You see, Milongalo was one of those young people who were very bold, brave, and energetic. And they were basically committed to bring and see change in the country. These were people who basically were saying, we would rather die than live in these conditions where our parents basically were treated like young kids by the white regime and the system. Those were type of people who were basically committed to seeing change and committed to do whatever for the sake of South Africans. And in this regard, I'm referring to the sake of our Tumahole people.
Yes. You also spoke about Tsu. Can you maybe try to tell us more about Tsu and the contribution it had in the community?
Yes. So mainly, I think it came from the idea that we had from Gibson Kenter's plays or theater activities. Because we used to watch Gibson Kente in our community halls and so on. And there will be a subtle message there that basically was saying, black men, you are on your own. You can't expect manna from heaven. You have to do something about this. And our leaders during that time, and mainly Obrafes, decided also to form a local cultural group called TSO. I'm saying cultural in the sense of basically to go and spread the message of the struggle. You could not openly say it. So you had to come with theater activities, musical activities, where you'll be singing about slavery, you'll be singing about hard labor, and all those, about the conditions of black people, You will know that even the younger brother to Budapest also was part of those who were involved in those places. And many people who were young, of course, were participating in so. Interesting enough, by that time, some of us, we were in the Black Consciousness movement. ASAP, BCMA, and so on. I was one of those. I got converted to what we were calling, those who were believing in the Freedom Charter, the Charterist, by Budapest, first leader himself, when we were now teaching in Kwakwa. He was doing lots of activities. He really is somebody that we always must honor. Then, of course, we had other leaders. There are so many, it's a long list that we will be talking about in the memorial lecture. And of course, we have people like Bo Stiling and others also assisting. Many parents also getting involved and so on. But so basically, its main aim was to conscientize and send a message in our community that we really need to be proud of ourselves as Black people, and we also need to change the conditions that we were living under. But it was done in a subtle manner in the sense of cultural activities, musical activities, and so forth.
From time to time, you would hear many leaders from around Tumahole. They will forever talk about the A-team. Who are these people? What kind of a role did they play?
Look, of course, it is in the nature of struggles and revolutions all over the world that the enemy, as we would call it, it will also mobilize within your communities people who will oppose the revolution and, of course, oppose anything that has anything to do with changing the status quo. And in Paris, a group was formed to counter the Tso activities, to counter the uprisings, to counter the growing movement of resistance. And that body, amongst others, was the A-team. The A-team was supported, of course, by the apartheid regime in the form of your police, and to cause division in the communities and lots of confusion. And of course, it went to an extent of killing some of those who were in the forefront of the local struggles. People were hacked and so on. You know, just like you would have known about what Inkatha was doing against your UDF, ANC members, the same thing happened there in Tumahole with your A-teams and so on. But I must indicate, in all the struggles, you will get people who will always be working with what we were calling the system, who will work with your enemies and so on. Because in the processes, of course, they get paid. And money, as you would know, it can buy many people's souls. And there were people who were willing to sell their souls. And that is the A-team.
People are saying some of these people were torturing our people, but nowadays the very same people are leading the ANC. What's your take on that?
It's very unfortunate, and it's quite heartbreaking that the same people who were killing our people are the ones now who are more benefiting against those who suffered so much. And also, it is an indication that when you changed the system, when you got this democracy, it did not mean that the apartheid structures were dismantled. Many were there, and they infiltrated your ANC and the liberation movements. And they worked in such a manner that ultimately they occupy key positions. It is not only about the A-team. I'm referring to your national movements. So there are those people. Even today, some of them are our leaders. They are part of supposed to be broader movement to bring change. That is why then you see and you experience that this change is quite difficult, because those people, they were never brought in the culture of the liberation movement. And what do I mean about the culture of the liberation movement? I'm talking about people who were committed to certain values, the values of committed to our people, leadership that has a vision, what I would call an activist leadership. And an activist leadership is a leader who has the feel of ordinary people, ordinary South Africans. Visionary leaders, activists in the sense of taking initiative, leaders basically who can command the respect in our communities and be able to make sure that people follow them. And you'll find that these people who basically were working with the enemy, they are not that type of leaders. And I don't think they would be, because they will never grow up with those values that I just explained. No.
People feel like that those who were the role players at the time, they were sidelined. Like you said, many of them passed away, but there are still those who are still alive. Do you think they can still contribute to assist the leading party in terms of going forward from now?
Of course. Look, they have experience. They know where we come from. Their hearts are at the right place. But unfortunately, because we also have now this environment, atmosphere of everyone for his own, those who are leaders, not in terms of being able to be working for our communities, our societies, and so on. They would, of course, sideline those type of people and undermine them. And by so doing, of course, what we are doing is to undermine our history, the history that we mentioned earlier of suffering, poverty, and so on. And this is exactly what is happening in our country. Because many people now in these positions, which we now call positions of power, they are not putting people first. But what they put first is their own pockets. And that is why you will have these community leaders who have been there before, being sidelined and so on. And look, many of these people, when they were involved in these struggles, of course, they never expected that one day they will personally benefit, except, of course, to change the conditions of South Africans generally. So it was easy for them to be pushed aside, sidelined, and be put in the periphery, because they could not stand up and be seen to be fighting for positions, particularly positions of power, because they were never brought up in that type of a culture.
After 1994, there was local government. And to cut the long story short, with the current situation, our people are protesting all over the country. Where did we go wrong?
Let me first give an intro to say, after your Tumahole uprisings, the Val uprisings, the ground got so much fertile that the ANC, through Oliver Tambo as the president, and of course liberation movements in general, they were saying, now we are dismantling apartheid infrastructure, its state organs. We are coming with people's power and people's state organs. In other words, people themselves will put their own institutions that will make sure that we change the conditions that we're living under. Civic movements grew. UDF got formed in 1983 or so, with the main aim of empowering South Africans themselves to change the conditions that they were living under. We were not expecting manna from heaven. Yes, the leadership was there to give direction, but the initiative was from us as ordinary South Africans. Yes, come then 1994, many people believed that, okay, liberation movements are now unbanned, exiles are coming back, everything is fine now, the leadership can take over and govern. Unfortunately, and I think we all need to learn from this, that it is said that the price of liberation is permanent vigilance. You can't say, now you are liberated, you can go and sleep. You need to be always vigilant, or else your country, all the efforts that you put before will be sold for nothing. And I think we are at that stage now where we are basically woken up to say, you have not been vigilant enough. You have not been empowering ordinary South Africans to be in charge of their lives. They've been more expecting that individuals will change their lives. And in our struggle, we learned one thing. You need leaders who basically can make sure that there is a collective in terms of the energy, in terms of ideas, that will basically take us forward. And we have not actually implemented that post-1994. And given also what we said earlier about some of the people who basically don't have those values that we referred to earlier, also being there in positions of power, and then you get this type of a situation. The price of liberty is permanent vigilance. And I think we need to remember that.
Thabo Manyoni, people are talking about a cadre deployment. And they are saying we are where we are as a country, partly because of it. What are you saying?
I will say partly yes. I agree, partly. Some of us, we consider ourselves to be cadres. And of course, we were deployed in government. And as a cadre, we knew what our mission is. The unfortunate situation is everybody who is deployed, we now think they are cadres, but they don't have the values of cadership. And those values, let me indicate, are clearly espoused in the ANC constitution as one example, in the pledge there, that you are joining the ANC not with the intention of filling up your pockets. You are not joining it for your material benefit or personal gain. You join it for the sake of making sure that it becomes an effective instrument in the hands of South Africans to change their lives. Unfortunately, many who came in, they saw the benefits of personal gain and material benefit for themselves. So they came in there. And most of them got deployed. And so unfortunately, as the deployees, who basically are not cadres and who don't understand the values of what is meant by a cadre, they are plundering whatever is left of this country. Presently, we, of course, are in a crisis as South Africa. Mainly, you all know that it is said that most people in government are thieves, they are plundering, they don't have a vision, they don't know what's supposed to be happening and so forth. Yes, the majority who are there basically fit into that mode. Very few people who basically want to bring positive change are in government. Those that I earlier referred to as activist leaders, people who really want to see positive change. Most of them are there, of course, for their own material benefit and personal gain. And this is the unfortunate situation. The other thing is, presently, there is a poverty of ideas, poverty of intellectualism. You can't lead if you also are thinking like kids. You need to be above that level to be able to lead a country that is complex and complicated as South Africa. It can't just be led by people who don't have what I will call the capacity of ideological perspectives and, of course, of intellectualism. Because they need to analyze, they need to be objective, they need to know what needs to be done in order to address the challenges that we are faced with. And in most cases, we don't have those type of people.
The people of Tumahole are saying tomorrow it will be the 38th year since 1984. And they are asking only one question. What is there for us to celebrate?
Of course, I will say to them, one, we need to celebrate because we have changed the conditions that we were in during that time. The conditions that I explained earlier of your budget system, no electricity in houses, most people staying in shacks, streets not being tarred and so forth. But that is not enough. And I think that's the issue that we need to deal with. We can't celebrate the conditions that we are in now. Actually, most people will even say maybe apartheid was even better, simply because people were working and so forth. The main thing is to answer the question, where did we go wrong? And I think the problem lies with when we deployed people in positions of power, we never checked who are these people, what capacities do they have, what capabilities are they having? Are they those cadres that I referred to a little bit earlier, we just, as I said in one gathering, we didn't use what is called through the eye of the needle to say what type of public reps we want. People who will live with communities. When I say live with communities, I mean who understand the conditions and who are prepared to change those conditions. We didn't. What we did, we opened a double garage door, and everybody who came in, we said, these are leaders. And now we are reaping that, which we saw in terms of bringing people who don't have vision to lead our communities, to lead this government, and to lead, of course, local government.
People are saying in our lifetime, we are going to see the African National Congress losing power. Over the years, we've seen elections after elections, numbers are dropping. What could be the problem?
The problem is that one which I mentioned. The African National Congress is full of people who basically are not cadres, who are not activist leaders, people who are there for their own sake and for their own personal and material benefit, self-serving leaders, and that becomes a problem. So what we need to do is, as you said earlier, there are those good leaders out there who have been sidelined, who have been pushed to the periphery. Make sure that they become part of this movement. We bring them back. In order for us to save not only the African National Congress, but the country, we need to have those type of leaders who are visionaries to come and assist in making sure that we change this. Yes, the ANC will lose power if it carries on in the manner that it is doing. But I have hope that good men and women out there who are committed and who are peace-loving South Africans can be able to come and save the situation. They just need to say they can't write themselves off. They've been there, they know what needs to be done. They must come into the organization and be able to take over and renew this ANC, as you say, and make sure that for now it doesn't lose power. But the main thing is, it is not the name ANC. The issue is the brand, what the ANC stands for. Are these people, who most of them are supposed to be our leaders, are they basically pushing that brand? And what is the ANC brand? The ANC brand is clear, and it is even there in the preamble of our constitution and also in the ANC constitution. It was formed to build a non-racial society in South Africa, non-sexist, where people will never be judged by the skin of their color or their religion or creed. Now, for us to basically have that type of a South Africa that is prosperous, you need to have people who believe in this brand. And of course, you go to most of the ANC meetings and so on, you get people who are wearing ANC t-shirts. But deep down, they don't understand the brand. The same thing I said earlier in some gathering, that even when you go to the Communist Party meetings, you'll find people wearing red t-shirts. You don't become a communist by wearing a red t-shirt. It is about the consciousness, the belief that you need to change the lives of the working class, which basically is the impoverished class of them all. And I think that is what basically is killing the African National Congress. Having people who understand what the ANC is all about it is not about being ANC, it's about the values that make the ANC to be what it is.
You've said a mouthful, but my last question would be, this is the year of conferences, and people are saying a lot of things. My question to you is that, are we going to see Thabo Manyoni contesting to be the chairperson of the Free State?
Well, I've said earlier to you, I think it's high time that visionaries should come to the ANC. I'm not saying I'm one. They must be able to come and save, not the ANC as a name, but the brand and the values that this ANC is supposed to be standing for. And from my side, I think I'm one of those who understand the values of the African National Congress and what it stands for in terms of changing the lives of ordinary South Africans, in terms of making sure that we build a prosperous South Africa. There are many men and women out there who are even better than me, who must come in and lead this organization. Coming to me directly, one, I must indicate I've made up my mind. I am not going to write myself off. I'm not going to die before I die. I must carry on and do what is right for the sake of ordinary South Africans. And if I'm called upon to assist in that journey, yes, I am available. Like any other member of the African National Congress, I also have a right to stand to be elected or to elect. But one thing, when we elect, let's go and find men and women who are committed in bringing change into this country. It is quite embarrassing, and I think it is quite painful for many of us who know that the Ngalos, Fezledabis, Saxstains, many have died in this struggle, and their death are now seen as having died in vain. I think we should not allow that situation. So whoever understands this and is willing to come up and say, I also want to be counted in salvaging whatever that is now remaining, as you would see that everything has really been looted, nothing is working, your local government is dysfunctional, you are not getting clean water, energy, and so forth. Let's bring those leaders to assist in saving our country. We have no other any option but to make it happen. And I, for one, I'm saying, yes, I will be there. If you say to Mamina, I'm willing.
Thabo Manyoni, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.